faithfully bringing value and exploring great books worldwide.
Hi, this is Sally from Book Talks. Today we're diving into Wuthering Heights, a novel by British author Emily Brontë. In mid-19th century England, at Reverend Patrick Bronte's home in Haworth, Yorkshire, it's amazing that three brilliant female writers emerged, a unique phenomenon even in world literary history. Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre debuted in autumn 1847, and then less than 2 months later, Sister Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights and Anne Bronte's Agnes Grey came out soon after. These works are acclaimed now, but back then only Jane Eyre succeeded big time, while Wuthering Heights was rejected as too bizarre and even slammed for showing sick emotions. Emily was born in 1818 and died of tuberculosis in 1848 at just 30. After she passed, over a century of interpretations by critics and readers lifted Wuthering Heights to surpass Jane Eyre in reputation. In 2003, the BBC's list of 100 best-loved British novels had Wuthering Heights at 12th. Emily's now seen as a genius on par with Shakespeare and one of the 19th century's top poets. So, what's the charm that turned this once criticized weird and morbid novel into a classic? First, I'll cover the story, then analyze why it's a classic through characters, writing tricks, and different perspectives. Overall, Wuthering Heights tells a wild tale of love and revenge, spanning 1757 to 1801, set on the Yorkshire moors in two isolated estates. One day, Mr. Earnshaw, the old master of Wuthering Heights, went to Liverpool. On the street, he found a 7 or 8-year-old orphan, even though the boy looked dark as if from the devil. But Mr. Earnshaw took him as a gift from God, brought him home, and named him Heathcliff. This outsider joined Wuthering Heights, sparking shifts in family relationships. The most intense reaction was from Hindley, old Earnshaw's son, because this wild child of unknown origin actually won Earnshaw's favor, stealing his father's love and privileges. He became so jealous that he bullied Heathcliff whenever he could. However, Catherine, old Earnshaw's mischievous daughter, actually liked being with the wild Heathcliff. They were inseparable and often ran to the moors from dawn. And so, they'd play there all day. But after the Earnshaws passed away, things changed abruptly. Because when Hindley became the master of Wuthering Heights, he not only stopped Heathcliff from contacting his sister Catherine, but also cruelly abused him, forcing him to work like the other servants. Heathcliff's status at Wuthering Heights plummeted. Meanwhile, young Catherine underwent subtle changes. One day, Catherine and Heathcliff trespassed into Thrushcross Grange. The young master, Edgar Linton, was a wealthy, refined gentleman, completely different from Heathcliff's wild and rugged nature. Catherine was instantly drawn to him, and from then on, she saw Heathcliff differently. At the same time, she started minding her manners, gradually changing from a hatless, rude, wild girl into a graceful, beautiful, and elegant young lady. Soon, Catherine reached marrying age. Naturally, Heathcliff was deeply in love with her, and Linton also fell for the elegant and charming Catherine, proposing to her. Obviously, Linton had the elegance, politeness, wealth, and superior status of high society, while Heathcliff was just a lowly, penniless boy. Caught between Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange, Catherine ultimately chose to marry Linton. As for Heathcliff, no matter how cruel Hindley's physical and mental torment was, he could endure it, because he was constantly thinking of Catherine. She was his only attachment at Wuthering Heights. Upon learning of Catherine's marriage, Heathcliff was utterly heartbroken and then angrily left home. 3 years later, Heathcliff transformed into a wealthy and powerful gentleman, returned to the estate, and began a series of mad revenge plots. His revenge unfolded simultaneously at both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. First was Hindley at Wuthering Heights, who had become a playboy in the 3 years Heathcliff was away. Hindley drank and gambled. When Heathcliff returned, Hindley had squandered all his fortune, had to mortgage Wuthering Heights to the scheming Heathcliff, and even became his servant, eventually dying from alcoholism. Ah, Heathcliff's revenge extended to the next generation. He tormented Hindley's son, Hareton, in every way possible. Heathcliff also extended his revenge to Thrushcross Grange. Catherine, who had married into the Grange, lived unhappily with Linton, remaining depressed. Heathcliff returned in glory, revisited Thrushcross Grange, and rekindled his old flame with Catherine. They met secretly, but the constraints of morality and ethics tormented Catherine day and night, torn between reason and passion. Finally, her fragile nerves broke. She fell into madness, became gravely ill, and before dying, gave birth prematurely to a baby girl. Furious, Heathcliff then lured Linton's sister Isabella into eloping. He imprisoned her at Wuthering Heights, tormenting her mercilessly. Unable to bear it, Isabella gave premature birth to a boy, young Heathcliff, and soon died. Heathcliff deliberately took advantage of Linton's critical illness to force him to marry his daughter, young Cathy, to young Heathcliff. After Linton's death, Heathcliff became owner of Thrushcross Grange. While the older generation's hatred remained, the next generation's story unfolded. Young Heathcliff died soon after marriage, leaving young Cathy behind. Meanwhile, Hindley's son Hareton grew into a handsome youth. Though raised in a loveless, harsh environment, he remained kind-hearted and gentle. After her brief, broken marriage, young Cathy gradually fell in love with her cousin nearby. Heathcliff initially meant to separate them, but seeing their tender love reminded him of his past with Catherine. He realized Hareton mirrored his younger self, understanding that eye-for-eye violence backfired. Abandoning revenge, a wasted and lost Heathcliff fell gravely ill. On a stormy night, he died miserably, finally resting beside Catherine's grave, never to part again. That's the gist of Wuthering Heights. In this lonely, desolate isolation, two generations of strange emotional entanglements unfolded. Heathcliff, an orphan at the bottom of society, suffered oppression from the upper class. Despairing over Catherine's love, he became a demon of vengeance. He lived in agony between love and hatred, yearning and torment, until old age, when Hareton and young Cathy's love awakened a faint warmth in him. This makes us wonder, why did Catherine betray her true feelings and choose a glamorous, upper-class marriage? And why did Heathcliff turn love into hatred and embark on extreme revenge? British novelist Somerset Maugham once described the puzzle of Heathcliff and Catherine's love this way: "I don't know of any other novel where love's agony, obsession, and cruel persistence are described so astonishingly." Heathcliff and Catherine shared similar wild personalities and a love for freedom. They grew up together at Wuthering Heights, running and playing on the moors since childhood, wandering through primitive wilderness like thorns in a blizzard, growing unrestrained. Orphaned early, they formed an alliance against their brother's bullying and tyranny. Shared souls and pursuits made them almost one, yet their love ended tragically. This stemmed from the complexity of their personalities and backgrounds. First, Catherine's complexity shows in her conflicted feelings for Heathcliff. On one hand, she loved Heathcliff deeply, telling housekeeper Nellie, "The greatest sorrow in this world is Heathcliff's sorrow. He's always, always in my mind, not as pleasure, but as my own being. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be. If he were destroyed, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger." She even saw Heathcliff as another self. "I am Heathcliff. He's always in my heart." Yet on the other hand, Catherine chose to marry Linton. If her love for Heathcliff was a unique soul bond, her affection for Linton was socially acceptable, a conventional match. Catherine used a vivid metaphor to express her different feelings for these two men. "My love for Linton is like the leaves in the woods. I know full well that when winter changes the trees, time will change those leaves. But my love for Heathcliff is like the eternal rock beneath. Though it may not bring much visible joy, that joy is essential. Because I am Heathcliff," He's forever in my heart. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are identical. While Linton's soul is as different as moonlight and lightning or frost and fire, after Earnshaw died, Heathcliff became a servant at Wuthering Heights. If Catherine married him, she'd sink to his penniless level, trapped there enduring her brother's abuse. Doe. Of course, Catherine wasn't entirely selfish. She naively thought marrying Linton would let her use Thrushcross Grange's status and wealth to rescue Heathcliff from discrimination. This wishful thinking was doomed. When Heathcliff visited the Grange, the Lintons made him wait in the kitchen, not the parlor.
In that society, an unbridgeable gap separated rich and poor. Many headstrong women like Catherine had to compromise between romance and harsh reality.
Catherine's dual nature reflected humanity's split between society and primal instincts. Through housekeeper Nellie's eyes, the novel shows Catherine's different selves at Thrushcross Grange versus Wuthering Heights. And at the Grange, she adopted refined manners, suppressing her wild, rude side. But back at the Heights, she dropped manners that would draw mockery, unleashing her untamed nature. Ambitious and dual-natured, Catherine gradually drifted from Heathcliff the servant toward Linton, her social equal, handsome and refined. Yet Catherine yearned for the Grange while clinging to the Heights.
Unwittingly, she betrayed Heathcliff and deceived Linton.
After becoming Mrs. Linton, Catherine found no happiness, often overwhelmed by sudden despair. She realized she'd been exiled from her world, wishing to be that wild, stubborn, free girl again. For Catherine, that wild freedom seemed her true nature and the core of her soul connection with Heathcliff. After marrying Linton at Thrushcross Grange, away from Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff, her two selves, civilized society persona and wild primal self, clashed violently. This conflict peaked when Heathcliff returned to the Grange, ultimately causing her madness and destruction. During their last secret meeting at the Grange, Heathcliff painfully accused her. "Why did you betray your own heart? You killed yourself! Shame, death! Nothing from God or Satan could part us! Yet you chose this!" Only through death could Catherine escape worldly constraints and her spiritual torment, uniting with Heathcliff, her other inner self, in eternity. Here we deeply feel Catherine's character complexity. Unlike 19th century female novels, where male writers depicted women as either angelic or monstrous, flat, one-dimensional stereotypes, Emily Brontë crafted Catherine as multidimensional, both primal and craving refinement. She bravely loved across class lines, yet surrendered to social norms by marrying status-equal Linton. This makes Wuthering Heights truly groundbreaking. Now consider Heathcliff's revenge. His complexity lies in coexisting good and evil. A dark-skinned, rough-mannered foundling with unknown origins, utterly unlikable. Though adopted by kind old Earnshaw, others saw a gypsy or devil, his jagged personality clashing with civilized society. In harsh conditions, Heathcliff learned endurance, grateful for old Earnshaw's fatherly love, while protecting young Catherine from her brother's bullying. But after protector old Earnshaw died, he became a lowly servant under Henley's control, treated like livestock. Hatred and humiliation twisted Heathcliff's soul. Especially after losing Catherine's love, he launched his revenge plot. He'd torment those who took Catherine from him. He didn't love Linton's sister Isabella, but lured her into marriage anyway. "Just to defeat Thrushcross Grange's master," he told Isabella, "Linton caused Catherine's illness." "So you'll suffer for your brother." Isabella couldn't comprehend her demonic husband. In an early letter to Nellie, she lamented, "A tiger or snake terrifies me less than him." Was Heathcliff just avenging Linton? Deeper down, Heathcliff targeted white civilized society that oppressed him. A dark-skinned outsider, rebelling against British order, a marginal figure from the outside world. Vengeance against so-called superior Western civilization. Bizarrely, Catherine returned to high society through marriage. To win back Catherine's love, Heathcliff disguised himself as a wealthy gentleman. He seized Wuthering Heights from Hindley. Then, through marriage to Isabella and later unions, he gradually took over Thrushcross Grange, using the upper-class rules he hated against them. Even in death, Heathcliff's eyes stayed open, grinning fiercely at mortality. This inadvertently reveals Emily's complex feelings toward the British Empire. So beyond human depth, Wuthering Heights succeeds by showing savage versus civilized, madness versus reason. If the Moors symbolize life's cruelty, then Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange represent opposing human forces. Wuthering Heights oozes hatred, violence, rage, showcasing humanity's savage primal instincts. Heathcliff represents Wuthering Heights' wildness, while Thrushcross Grange symbolizes elegance, sunny, harmonious, and peaceful. Linton embodies the latter, yet both forces merge in Catherine. Her Freudian theory, Catherine houses both the free, pleasure-seeking id and the socially constrained ego. Choosing Linton's civilized world over Heathcliff's primal realm meant suppressing her true desires, a gilded cage. Catherine craved Linton's social reality, yet couldn't abandon Heathcliff's raw freedom. This split between savagery and civility shattered her psyche, leaving unrest even in death. Catherine's fractured selves reflect humanity's tragic dilemma. Torn between primal urges and societal chains, we must leave childhood's wildness behind as we age, trading instinct for civilization. Yet, civilization's rules suffocate us, making us yearn for lost freedom and passion. As Rousseau said, man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. This struggle burns brightest in Catherine, a woman craving liberty in a patriarchal cage. In Victorian England, women like Catherine couldn't inherit property or earn wages, trapped at society's bottom. So she fantasized that marriage might elevate her and Heathcliff, a desperate gamble. Patriarchy forced her to become a hopper lady, strangling her wild spirit in a war between instinct and duty. Through Emily's pen, we glimpse 19th century women's suffocating pressures and inner wars.
Meanwhile, civilized society branded Heathcliff a devilish outsider, a heretic.
Dark-skinned and grim-faced as a child, he muttered incomprehensibly, alien from birth.
Even grown, he remained exiled from polite society, forever clashing with Thrushcross Grange's refinement.
British literary critic Eagleton even thought Heathcliff might be a gypsy or an Irishman oppressed by the British Empire.
In Heathcliff, who's unrefined and uncultured, you can easily spot a destructive streak, a satanic rebellious spirit.
This outsider defiance is enough to overthrow the hypocrisy and weakness symbolized by Thrushcross Grange, exposing the empire's hollowness. Wuthering Heights. Its classic status in world literature comes not just from its shocking love and revenge tale, but also from its ingenious narrative artistry. Unlike Jane Eyre's first-person narration, Wuthering Heights uses multiple viewpoints, showcasing masterful shifts in time and space. Reading it is like solving a puzzle. You gotta piece together scattered fragments from all over. The novel spans 34 chapters, starting in 1771 when orphan Heathcliff was brought to Wuthering Heights by Earnshaw. And by autumn 1803, young Cathy and Hareton become lovers, covering over 32 years and 3 generations of 2 families. It uses a layered narrative with flashbacks and multiple perspectives woven together. In that, the first layer is Lockwood, a visitor to Wuthering Heights, narrating chronologically to frame the story and witness the revenge's end. But the second layer is Nellie as the main narrator, telling the story in flashbacks over 30 years. That's the novel's core. The third layer includes Catherine, Heathcliff, etc., narrating separately through diaries, letters, or other characters' accounts. For instance, Isabella writes to Nellie about her elopement with Heathcliff, or maids relay what they saw to Nellie, who then tells Lockwood. This interwoven narrative style connects like a chain, one link after another. The author has different narrators take turns, turning a thrilling love story from direct to indirect presentation, guiding readers to explore it from afar. The novel's first chapter begins. 18011, I've just returned from visiting my landlord, that solitary neighbor who seems bent on causing me trouble. Lockwood first arrives at Wuthering Heights and meets the eccentric master, Heathcliff. In the attic's collection of books, he discovers Catherine's notebook, sparking his curiosity about the family's secrets. Investigative urge. In a dreamlike state, Lockwood is haunted by Catherine's ghost and hears a voice cry out,
I've come home. I was walking on the moors and got lost.
For 20 years, I've been a wanderer. Catherine's ghost repeatedly haunts Wuthering Heights at night. This depiction of supernatural horror atmosphere has the classic features of Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction was a popular novel style in 18th century Europe, typically featuring themes like property disputes, religious persecution, or love conspiracies, with suspenseful plots and an atmosphere of terror and mystery. Wuthering Heights has distinct Gothic elements, but significantly breaks the Gothic novel mold. For example, it focuses more on shaping characters' psychology and complex personalities, with every detail rich in symbolic meaning. Like, this is evident from the characters' naming. And the English name Wuthering Heights, with its guttural sounds and pronunciation, gives a gloomy, desolate, and terrifying feel. Heathcliff's name can be split into Heathcliff. Cliff means a steep rock face, symbolizing his rock-hard personality. The English name Thrushcross Grange, named after a thrush bird, presents a light, melodious imagery. Imagery like strong winds, storms, withered trees, and rocks is frequently associated with Wuthering Heights. Imagery like flowers, birds, and spring often relates to Thrushcross Grange. And nightmare imagery always accompanies Catherine. This sums up the symbolic interpretation of Wuthering Heights. Additionally, there are other perspectives like meritology, structuralism, feminism, psychoanalysis, postcolonialism, new historicism, etc. For over a century, many writers have drawn nourishment from Emily's writing across different literary movements, showcasing the novel's complex depth and originality, gradually establishing it. And her literary pioneering lies in this complexity and depth of Wuthering Heights, making the study of Emily Brontë a craze in the 20th century. While Charlotte's Jane Eyre had autobiographical elements, Emily lived simply, no romantic experience, minimal social interaction, almost completely isolated. How could a young, unworldly woman write such an epic love tragedy? What astonishing imagination let her explore humanity's wildness, love, hatred, revenge, and forgiveness. Emily was mainly homeschooled. Later, with her aunt's support, she studied French literature in Belgium with her older sister Charlotte, greatly expanding her worldview. Unlike sociable Charlotte with refined tastes, Emily was introverted, loved solitude and wild moors, like Catherine and Heathcliff's childhood freedom.
Charlotte once said of Emily,
Freedom was her breath. Without it, she'd rather die. In exploring freedom, solitude, and inner worlds, Emily showed astonishing resilience and depth. In an early poem, she wrote, "I am the only being whose doom none would inquire. No tear would shed, no mourner grieve. Born unnoticed, lived without care. Art's solitude matched my birth." These brief lines, mournful, anxious, isolated, their different personalities shaped how Charlotte and Emily perceived the world and wrote. Jane Eyre feels intimate and uplifting, heroes overcoming class barriers to find happiness. It's a reunion comedy, while Wuthering Heights chills with fear, trembling, and death. Supernatural and tragic, Catherine seems fragile and indecisive compared to Jane Eyre's brave independence. Heathcliff likewise lacks Rochester's maturity, stability, or social polish. He let his wounded soul strike out wildly, firing arrows of venomous revenge at the world that insulted him, ready to destroy everything, including himself. While both portray love, the relationship in Jane Eyre between Jane and Rochester is restrained and rational. But Catherine and Heathcliff's love, it's like a northern gale on the moors, wild, violent, unchecked, with destructive force. Renowned novelist Virginia Woolf deeply compared Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. She noted that Charlotte wrote from intense personal experience, yet relatable on a common human level. But Emily's creative impulse came from humanity's mysterious, awe-inspiring forces, not personal suffering. She gazed upon a fractured world and, through imagination, stitched it whole in her novel. Through her characters, she voiced universal and eternal human powers. Clearly, Woolf, also a female writer, revered Emily's approach as her ideal model. This drive to confront fractured worlds and transform visions into the sublime explains Wuthering Heights' enduring 20th century appeal. As critic Matthew Arnold praised, Emily's soul held extraordinary passion, intense emotion, sorrow, courage, unmatched since Byron. Emily's brief 30-year life produced only Wuthering Heights, yet it secured her immortality. Nearly 2 centuries have passed since the era of Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Today, at the Brontë Parsonage Museum, visitors see Catherine, Heathcliff, and Linton's gray tombstones standing solemnly. Reflecting on this legendary romance enshrined in literary history, as narrator Lockwood said, "Beneath that mild sky, I lingered by these 3 graves, watching moths flutter among heather and harebell, listening to soft winds rustle through grass. I wondered how anyone could imagine unquiet slumbers for those sleeping beneath that quiet earth."
All right, that's our interpretation of Wuthering Heights for you.
You'll find reading notes below the audio. See you next time.